My name is Hannah, I'm 27 years old, and if you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be standing silently at my brother's wedding, pretending I didn't exist, I probably would have laughed in your face. Or maybe cried, because back then, laughter didn't come easy. See, I wasn't the golden child. That role belonged to my older brother, Ryan. He was the shining star in my family, the one who made our parents beam with pride. Football captain, straight-A student, and eventually, the successful lawyer who could do no wrong. Me? I was the disappointment. The "what are we going to do with her" child. I was too quiet, too stubborn, and when I didn't follow the carefully laid path my family tried to shove me down, I was labeled a failure. At every holiday dinner, my mother would bring up Ryan's achievements, his latest internship, his promotions, his engagement to a perfect woman named Caroline. And then, like clockwork, her eyes would drift to me. The questions always came sharp and polished, knives dressed up as casual conversation. So, Hannah, are you still figuring things out, or when will you get serious with your life? It wasn't that I didn't have ambition. I did. I just chose a different path. But they never cared to ask what that path was. To them, anything outside of their picture-perfect vision was worthless. So, when Ryan's wedding rolled around, I knew exactly what my role would be: sit quietly in the corner, smile politely when people spoke to me, and fade into the background. I didn't even get to bring a +1. My mother said, "Let's keep it simple. We don't want distractions." The reception was lavish: crystal chandeliers, white roses at every table, and a band that probably cost more than I made in a month. People laughed, drank champagne, and congratulated Ryan like he was some kind of royalty. And then it happened. Ryan's best man, a tall guy with dark hair and piercing green eyes, suddenly froze when he saw me. He excused himself from a group of groomsmen and walked straight toward my table. The crowd seemed to sense something, because conversations slowed, eyes following his steps. He stopped right in front of me, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Wait, it's really you?" My heart pounded. I hadn't expected him to be here. And judging by the look on my mother's face, pale, lips trembling, neither had she. The room went quiet, and for the first time in years, I felt the attention shift to me. I froze in my seat, clutching the edge of the linen tablecloth as if it could anchor me to the ground. All around me, the air seemed to thicken, heavy with curiosity and unease. I could practically hear the whispers beginning, though no one dared to speak loud enough for the bride and groom to hear. The best man's eyes locked on mine, disbelief written across his face. He was taller than I remembered, broader in the shoulders, his jaw sharper. But the moment he said my name, the years melted away, and I saw him as he was back then, when everything in my life had come crashing down. "Hannah?" His voice cracked slightly, though he tried to steady it. I thought. He stopped himself, glancing quickly at my mother, then at Ryan, who had turned from the head table, confusion spreading across his perfect features. I didn't answer. My throat felt dry, my chest tight. He wasn't just some random person from my past. He was Ethan Blake. And the last time I saw him, my life was in ruins. Ethan had been a year older than me in high school, best friends with Ryan, always at our house, always in the middle of my brother's orbit. But unlike the others, Ethan actually noticed me. He noticed how my family dismissed me, how my mother's words stung, how Ryan's smug laughter made me shrink into myself. For a time, he had been the only one who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. And then, one night, everything changed. My mother caught us talking in the backyard, too close, too comfortable, too real. The next day, Ethan stopped showing up at our house. Ryan cut me off completely, furious that I had embarrassed him. And Ethan, well, he disappeared. I heard rumors that he'd left town after graduation, chasing opportunities far from our small suburb. I thought I'd never see him again. And yet here he was, standing in front of me in a tuxedo, Ryan's best man. The silence in the room stretched long enough for Caroline, the bride, to finally notice. "Ethan," she called, half laughing, "what's going on?" Ethan's gaze never wavered from me. I didn't think Hannah would actually be here. Ryan stood now, his smile gone, his jaw clenched. Ethan. Sit down. But Ethan didn't move. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room, like the years hadn't passed at all. And for the first time in my life, I saw something flicker across my mother's face, fear. Because Ethan knew the truth. And I wasn't going to stay silent forever. The clinking of champagne glasses and the laughter from the band faltered, replaced by an uneasy hush that spread like a stain across the room. I could feel dozens of eyes burning into me, into Ethan, into the tight-lipped mask my mother was trying to hold in place. Ryan's voice cut through the silence. Sharp. Commanding. Ethan. I said sit down. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he leaned forward just slightly, his gaze fixed on me. You look different, he said quietly, but his words carried, as though they were meant for everyone to hear. Stronger. I wasn't sure you'd ever come back after what they did to you. The whispers began instantly. Guests leaned into one another, murmuring, confused. My palms went slick with sweat, my stomach twisting. I hadn't prepared for this, not here, not now. Caroline laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. What are you talking about? Ethan, sit down. You're making it weird. But Ethan ignored her. His eyes flicked to Ryan, then to my mother. You never told them, did you? My mother's voice came out sharp and cold, laced with panic. That's enough, Ethan. And in that moment, I knew. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't let it go. My mind reeled back to that night, the argument, the slammed doors, my mother's voice dripping with venom as she told me I was nothing, that I'd ruined Ryan's reputation just by existing. And then, the plan they hatched to make me disappear. They hadn't cared what it would do to me. They hadn't cared that I was only 17. Ethan had known. He'd been there. And if he was bringing it up now, it meant he wasn't afraid anymore. I swallowed hard, my voice breaking free before I could stop it. You don't have to protect them anymore. The crowd gasped. My mother's face drained of color, and Ryan's fists tightened at his sides. Ethan nodded slightly, as if giving me permission, like he'd been waiting years for this moment. Protect them, someone whispered from the back. Ethan straightened his shoulders, his voice firm now, carrying over the room. Your perfect family isn't what it looks like. Hannah isn't the failure they've always made her out to be. She's the one who paid the price for their lies. The room erupted, questions flying, voices overlapping. Caroline looked horrified, Ryan furious, my mother on the brink of collapse. And me? For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. Because Ethan wasn't just hinting anymore. He was opening the door to the truth. And I was ready to walk through it. The noise in the reception hall rose to a dull roar, gasps, whispers, Caroline tugging nervously at her dress while Ryan barked orders to the groomsmen to get everyone under control. My mother sat stiffly at her table, gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter in her hand. And me? I sat there, trembling, my pulse hammering in my ears, staring at Ethan like he was the only lifeline I had in that suffocating room. For years, I'd dreamed of this moment, the truth clawing its way out of the shadows, but now that it was here, my voice caught in my throat. Ethan must have seen it, because he stepped closer to me, lowering his voice just enough for me to hear, though the crowd still strained to catch every word. They don't get to silence you anymore, Hannah. Say it. Say what they did. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stand. My knees wobbled, but adrenaline kept me upright. Every eye in the room followed me, and for once, I didn't shrink away. I met my mother's gaze, then Ryan's, before I spoke. When I was 17, I said slowly, my voice shaking but loud enough to carry, I got accepted into a scholarship program. A full ride to NYU. It was the first time in my life I felt like maybe I was worth something. But when I told my family, I looked straight at my mother, they told me it didn't matter. That I'd never make it. That my place was here, in this house, in Ryan's shadow. The crowd murmured, confused. I tightened my fists. The hardest part was coming. They didn't just discourage me. They destroyed it. They contacted the school, they pulled strings, they lied about me. And when I fought back, when I said I was going anyway, they threw me out. They told everyone I left on my own, that I ran away because I couldn't handle life. And my voice cracked, my chest aching. I lived on scraps for months while Ryan played the perfect son, while my mother told people I was nothing but a lost cause. A stunned silence fell over the room. Someone gasped. Caroline's eyes darted to Ryan, her face pale. That's not true, my mother snapped, standing now, her voice trembling with rage. Don't you dare spread these lies in front of decent people. But Ethan cut her off, his voice steady, resolute. It's true. I was there the night they threw her out. I begged Ryan to stop, but he told me she'd only drag the family down. And you, he turned toward my mother, you said you'd rather have no daughter at all than a daughter who made you look weak. The room erupted again, gasps, accusations, whispers of disbelief. Ryan's face burned red, his fists clenched. Caroline covered her mouth, stepping back from him like she'd just seen a stranger. And me? For the first time in a decade, I stood tall in front of all of them. Because the truth was finally out. Ryan's chair screeched against the polished floor as he shoved it back and stormed toward me. His face was red, jaw tight, veins standing out on his neck. For a split second, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who smirked when he stole the last piece of cake, the one who made sure my parents only saw me at my weakest. But now, that smugness had been replaced by something uglier, panic. You don't know what you're talking about, he spat, his voice low but venomous. Don't you dare come into my wedding and try to ruin this with your lies. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. These aren't lies, Ryan. You and Mom made sure everyone thought I was worthless. You painted me as some runaway failure when you knew the truth. The guests shifted in their seats, uneasy, but no one looked away. They wanted to hear this. They wanted to see if the cracks in Ryan's perfect facade were real. Ryan's lips curled into a sneer. You always had this victim complex, Hannah. Always blaming someone else for your screw-ups. Maybe if you weren't so, he cut himself off, but the damage was done. His tone dripped with the same contempt he'd used on me my entire life. And this time, I didn't flinch. Say it, I shot back, my voice steady, louder now. Go ahead. Tell them what you always told me. That I was nothing. That I'd never make it. That the only thing I was good for was making you look better. Say it in front of everyone, Ryan. A ripple went through the crowd, whispers, uneasy glances. Caroline stared at him, her mouth slightly open, like she'd just glimpsed a side of her husband she'd never seen before. Ryan's face twisted. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. You don't belong here. You never did. But I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't the girl he could bully into silence. I straightened my shoulders, speaking loud enough for the entire room. You're right, Ryan. I don't belong here. Not in a family that would rather bury me than let me shine. But look around you, I gestured to the stunned faces, the guests whispering, Caroline staring at him in horror. Everyone finally sees you for what you are. And you can't hide behind Mom's lies anymore. Ryan's jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides, but for the first time, he didn't have an answer. The perfect groom, the golden son, cornered in front of everyone he cared about impressing. And God, it felt good. Ethan stepped closer, placing himself between us, his voice calm but firm. You've controlled this long enough, Ryan. Tonight, it ends. My mother's voice cracked from across the room, desperate now. Stop this. All of you. This is a wedding, not a trial. But she was wrong. Because this was the reckoning I'd been waiting for. For a moment, the room was suspended in silence, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Ryan's chest rose and fell rapidly, his fists balled, his perfect groom's mask shattered beyond repair. My mother looked like a cornered animal, her eyes darting, searching for an escape that wasn't there. And then Caroline, sweet, polished Caroline, finally found her voice. "Ryan," she said quietly at first, but it carried. The band had stopped playing. Even the servers froze in place, trays hovering midair. "Is it true?" Ryan turned toward her, forcing a laugh, trying to slip back into his easy charm. "Baby, you know how Hannah is. She's always been dramatic. She's twisting things. Don't." Caroline's voice cracked like a whip, sharper than I'd ever heard. "Don't you dare stand there and lie to my face." Gasps spread through the room. Ryan froze, clearly stunned that his new bride, who had always looked at him like he hung the moon, wasn't playing her part. Caroline's hands trembled as she clutched the lace of her gown, but her eyes never left his. "You told me your sister drifted away. That she chose to cut herself off. That she was unstable. You made me believe she abandoned you. But from the way she's standing here right now, I don't see unstable. I see someone you tried to erase." My throat tightened. For the first time in years, someone outside of Ethan actually saw me. "Care," Ryan tried again, stepping toward her. But she stepped back. Hard. "Don't. Just don't." The crowd was buzzing now, people whispering to each other, some glaring openly at Ryan, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Caroline's voice dropped, steady but full of hurt. "I could have forgiven almost anything, Ryan. Anything. But not this. Not the way you treated your own sister, not the way you built your life on lies. You're not the man I thought I was marrying." The words hit him harder than anything I could have said. His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. For the first time, Ryan looked small. My mother tried to intervene, stepping toward Caroline, her voice honeyed but desperate. "Caroline, dear, you don't understand." But Caroline turned on her, sharp and unflinching. "No, I understand perfectly. You enabled this. You let it happen. And now you want to sweep it under the rug again? Not this time." Ethan glanced at me, his expression almost proud, like this was the shift he'd been waiting for, the moment when their perfect little empire began to crumble under its own weight. And standing there, watching Ryan squirm under Caroline's gaze, I realized something. For the first time, they weren't just facing me. They were facing the truth. The silence broke like a dam, and suddenly the room wasn't quiet anymore. It was buzzing, voices overlapping, whispers turning into accusations. Years of carefully crafted lies were crumbling in real time, and the guests, family, old neighbors, colleagues, were starting to connect the dots. From the back of the hall, my Aunt Linda spoke first. She'd always been the type to say what others wouldn't, and she stood now, her voice loud and steady. "So that's why you never let us talk to Hannah. You told us she was unstable, that it was better to leave her alone. You made us believe she didn't want us." Her words cut deep, sharper than I expected. My chest tightened, because I remembered those years. Birthdays where no one called, holidays where I sat alone, thinking my whole family had just stopped caring. Ryan's head whipped toward her. "That's not true." But Linda wasn't done. "You lied to us, Ryan. You and your mother. You let us all believe she was gone because she chose it. When the truth is, you pushed her out." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. My cousin Josh stood up, his face red. "I remember asking about her when I was a kid, and you told me she was too much trouble. You made it sound like she was some kind of addict. But looking at her now, it's clear who the real liars are." Ryan's jaw tightened, but his eyes darted, searching for someone, anyone, to defend him. For once, no one did. Even some of his groomsmen shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other. They weren't going to stick their necks out for him. And then, Mr. Sanders, one of my father's old friends, someone who'd known our family for decades, spoke from the side of the room. His voice was gruff, but there was no mistaking the judgment in it. I knew something was off. The way your mother always changed the subject when Hannah's name came up. The way Ryan smirked whenever someone asked about her. I should have pressed harder. But now? Now it all makes sense. The weight of their stares fell heavy on Ryan and my mother. Their carefully spun web was unraveling, and instead of sympathy, they were getting scorn. Caroline's hand shook as she removed her wedding ring, placing it on the table with a soft clink that echoed louder than anything else in the room. She didn't say another word, but the message was clear: she was done. Ryan's face twisted, his perfect image in ruins. My mother's lips trembled as she tried to compose herself, but even she knew, the tide had turned, and there was no saving it. And me? For the first time, I didn't feel like the outcast in the room. I felt like the truth had finally given me back my place. Ryan's face was flushed, his jaw locked tight, and I could see it in his eyes. The cracks in his carefully built facade had split wide open. The guest stares, Caroline's ring abandoned on the table, the murmurs of disgust, everything was piling on him, and he was losing control. He turned on me like a storm. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled, his voice loud enough to cut through the chatter. "You think people will believe you over me? Over us? You've always been pathetic, Hannah. Always jealous. You're nothing without me, without this family. Nothing." The words rang in the air, bitter and venomous. A few gasps sounded from the crowd, but this time, no one looked at me with pity. They looked at him. I felt my hands shake, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From years of swallowing down my anger, my voice, my truth. I opened my mouth to respond, but Ethan moved before I could. He stepped between us, his tall frame blocking Ryan's advance, his voice steady, commanding. "Enough." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Get out of my way, Ethan." But Ethan didn't flinch. No. Not this time. He squared his shoulders, his tone sharper now. "I've watched you bully her since we were kids. I kept quiet because you were my best friend, and I regret that every damn day. But I won't stand by and let you tear her down again. Not here. Not ever." The room went still. Ethan's words weren't just a defense, they were a confession. A reckoning. Ryan barked a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "You think anyone cares what you say? You're a traitor. You turned your back on me." "No, Ryan," Ethan said firmly, his voice like steel. "I turned my back on you when I realized what kind of man you really are." The guests erupted again, whispers and gasps swirling. Ryan's fists tightened, and for a terrifying second, I thought he might actually swing at Ethan. But Ethan didn't waver. He stood rooted, calm but unyielding, daring Ryan to take that step. And Ryan, golden boy, perfect son, flawless groom, backed down. His chest heaved, his face red, but he didn't move closer. He just stood there, glaring at me with pure hatred, before snapping at the crowd, "You'll all regret this. You don't know the full story." But the truth was, everyone had seen enough. The golden sun wasn't untouchable anymore. And as Ethan reached back, his hand brushing mine in quiet reassurance, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing alone. The tension in the room was thick, the kind that pressed against your chest and made it hard to breathe. Ryan was pacing like a caged animal, his jaw clenched, but he knew better than to push Ethan again. That left only one person desperate enough to try and salvage what was left, my mother. She rose slowly, smoothing the front of her elegant navy dress as if appearances could still save her. Her voice was sharp, commanding, the same tone she had used my entire life when she wanted to put me in my place. "Enough of this nonsense," she said, her eyes sweeping the room. "This is a wedding. And my daughter," she practically spat the word, "has decided to hijack it for her own selfish need for attention. You don't know her like I do. She's always been dramatic. always looking for someone else to blame when she couldn't handle responsibility. There it was. The weapon she always used, narrative. She'd rewrite history right in front of me, and people would believe her. It had worked before. Why wouldn't it work now? But this time, the crowd didn't shift uncomfortably or look away. They watched me. They wanted my response. I stood tall, my heart hammering but my voice steady. That's your excuse for everything, isn't it, Mom? That I'm dramatic. That I make things up. That I'm not strong enough. But what's really dramatic is throwing your own daughter out of the house when she fought for a future you didn't approve of. Her lips thinned, but I didn't stop. You didn't just doubt me, you sabotaged me. You told NYU I wasn't mentally stable, that I couldn't handle the program. You stole my chance before I ever had it. And then you told everyone I left because I was a failure. A stunned silence fell over the guests. My mother's face drained of color, but I pressed on. You told me I'd never amount to anything. That the world would eat me alive. And when I survived anyway, when I worked my way back, when I built a life out of the ruins you left me in, you pretended I didn't exist. You didn't break me, Mom. You just made me stronger. And that's what you can't stand. The room erupted again, not with whispers this time but with sharp words, judgment, disbelief, disgust. Some of my relatives shook their heads openly at her, others whispered angrily among themselves. My mother tried to speak, but her voice cracked. For the first time in my life, she looked small. And as I stood there, shoulders back, chest heaving, I realized the balance of power had finally shifted. She couldn't control the story anymore. I could. The room buzzed with tension, all eyes locked on me and my mother. Her mask was slipping, her perfect composure cracking under the weight of too many witnesses and too much truth. For years, she'd relied on silence to protect her, mine, Ryan's, everyone's. But tonight, silence wasn't on her side. And then Ethan stepped forward. He glanced at me first, like he was asking permission. My heart pounded, but I gave him a small nod. I wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. Ethan faced the crowd, his voice calm but steady. Hannah isn't lying. I was there the night it happened. I heard every word. Gasps rippled through the room. My mother froze, her hand gripping the back of a chair for balance. Ryan's face twisted, but he stayed silent, glaring at Ethan with a venom that could kill. Ethan continued, louder now, so no one could miss a word. It was the night she got her acceptance letter from NYU. She came outside to tell me. She was so excited, her eyes were glowing. It was the happiest I'd ever seen her. But when her mom found us in the backyard, everything changed. She accused Hannah of being reckless, of making up dreams she could never achieve. She said she wouldn't waste money or family reputation on someone like her. My chest tightened hearing him say it aloud, but at the same time, it felt like a weight was lifting. And when Hannah fought back, Ethan said, his voice hardening, her mom told her she was finished. She said, and I quote, "You're not my daughter anymore if you go through with this." And Ryan, he turned, locking eyes with him, you told me to let her go. You said she'd drag everyone down, that she'd embarrass you if she stayed. You slammed the door behind her. The crowd erupted in whispers, outrage, and disbelief. Ethan's voice dropped, sharp as a knife. And when she was gone, you made me swear not to say anything. You told me she was better off forgotten. But I can't keep that secret anymore. Not when she's standing here, proving every single one of you wrong. The room was chaos now. Some guests openly glared at my mother and Ryan, others whispered angrily, a few even stood up as if ready to leave the reception entirely. Caroline covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. And me? I stood frozen, but not with fear, with relief. Because the truth wasn't just mine anymore. It was out in the open. And there was no putting it back. The crowd's reaction hit Ryan like a wave, and for the first time in my life, I watched him falter. His carefully built image, the the golden boy, the perfect son, the flawless groom, was cracking under the weight of Ethan's words and the disgust in every pair of eyes around him. Caroline wiped at her tears, her voice trembling but steady. You ruined her life, Ryan. You and your mother. And you made me part of the lie. Ryan's face twisted. No, Caroline, you don't understand. Don't, she cut him off, her voice sharp as glass. I don't want to hear it. The guests murmured louder now, some shaking their heads, others whispering openly. My Aunt Linda muttered, unbelievable, while my cousin Josh crossed his arms, glaring at Ryan like he wanted to punch him. And then Ryan snapped. You all think she's some kind of victim? His voice thundered across the room, silencing the murmurs. He jabbed a finger toward me, his face red and contorted with rage. She's nothing. She's always been nothing. A selfish brat who couldn't handle that the world doesn't revolve around her. She was jealous of me, jealous of everything I worked for. And now she wants to destroy me on my wedding day because she couldn't stand being irrelevant. The words spilled from him, venomous, unfiltered, the mask gone. Do you know what it's like, he shouted, his voice cracking with fury, to carry this family on your back? To be the one everyone depended on while she was off chasing fantasies? She would have dragged us all down. I did what had to be done. His chest heaved, his eyes wild. The room was dead silent, the air thick with shock. And then, slowly, Caroline stepped back from him, her voice breaking but clear. You didn't carry this family, Ryan. You carried a lie. And the only person you've ever cared about is yourself. The words hit harder than any slap. Ryan froze, his fists clenched, but he couldn't seem to form a response. And for the first time in my life, he looked powerless. Ethan glanced at me, his eyes steady, as if telling me, this is your moment. Take it. Because Ryan had finally shown everyone who he really was. And there was no going back. The silence after Ryan's outburst was deafening. He stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched, sweat shining on his forehead. His words still hung in the air like smoke after a fire, ugly, poisonous, impossible to ignore. I looked around the room. Faces I'd grown up with, faces that had once believed I was the broken one, were staring at me now with something different, not pity, not dismissal. Recognition. Understanding. And suddenly, I knew this was it. My chance. My voice, my truth, unfiltered. I stepped forward, my hands no longer trembling, my voice rising clear and steady. You've all heard it now. You've heard the truth slip out of Ryan's mouth. For years, they made me out to be the problem. The black sheep. The lost cause. But the truth is, I was the sacrifice. The one they decided didn't matter, so Ryan could shine brighter. My mother tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand, and for once, she stopped. I was 17, I continued, my throat tight but strong. 17 when they took my future away. 17 when my own family told me I wasn't good enough to exist in their world. They left me with nothing. And you know what? I survived. I built myself up from the ground. Without their money. Without their approval. Without their help. I turned toward Ryan, my voice sharper now. You told me I was nothing, Ryan. That I'd never make it without you. But look around, you're the one crumbling in front of everyone, not me. The crowd shifted, whispers turning into nods, murmurs of agreement. Some people even clapped softly, as if they couldn't help themselves. I faced my mother last. Her lips were pressed tight, her face pale, but I didn't flinch. You wanted me silent. You wanted me erased. But I'm still here. And I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. You can't control me anymore. You can't define me. That ends tonight. The room erupted, cheers, clapping, murmurs of support. It wasn't wild applause, but it was real. Genuine. For once, the weight of their judgment wasn't on me, it was on them. And as I stood there, breathless, shoulders squared, I realized something I'd been waiting my whole life to feel. I wasn't invisible anymore. The applause and murmurs of support washed over me like a tide, but I knew my family wasn't done, not yet. My mother's pride wouldn't allow her to sit down quietly, and Ryan's temper was boiling just beneath the surface. Sure enough, my mother stood tall again, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and desperation. "You're all being manipulated," she snapped, sweeping her gaze across the crowd. "This is her game. Hannah has always twisted things to make herself look like a victim. She's jealous, bitter. Don't let her lies fool you. You all know the kind of man Ryan is." But the room didn't nod in agreement the way it used to. No one rushed to back her up. Instead, Aunt Linda folded her arms, her voice sharp. "We thought we knew. But tonight, we've seen the truth." My mother faltered, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for her old power, the ability to bend people with words. But it wasn't working anymore. Ryan slammed his fist on the table, his voice booming. "You're all hypocrites. You've worshipped me for years, but the second my sister cries wolf, you turn on me? None of you would be where you are if it wasn't for me. None of you." The outburst silenced the room for a moment, but then the tide shifted. "You're delusional, Josh," my cousin shot back, standing up. "Nobody owes you anything. We thought you were someone to look up to. Turns out, you're just a bully with a nice suit." The crowd murmured in agreement. A few guests actually stood, shaking their heads in open disgust. Caroline, her eyes red and swollen from crying, spoke with icy calm. "Ryan, I don't even recognize you. This is who you really are. I see it now. And I'm done." She turned to the crowd, her voice louder, steadier. "So is this marriage?" The gasp that followed hit Ryan harder than any slap could have. His jaw dropped, but Caroline didn't hesitate. She picked up her bouquet, lifted her dress slightly, and walked straight out of the hall. Guests parted for her like the Red Sea, some clapping softly, some whispering in shock. Ryan shouted after her, his voice cracking. "Caroline! Don't do this." But she didn't even turn around. And the room, the same room that had always been his stage, his spotlight, turned its back on him too. For the first time in his life, Ryan stood alone. And the power he had lorded over me, over everyone, evaporated in an instant. Ryan's chest heaved as Caroline's footsteps faded down the hall. His face was a storm, rage, humiliation, panic, all colliding at once. For years, he'd been untouchable. The golden boy. The one everyone admired. And now, standing in front of the very people who once worshipped him, he looked small. He staggered, grabbing the back of a chair as if his knees might buckle. His eyes darted to the guests, pleading now instead of commanding. "You don't understand. I did everything for this family. Everything. I carried the weight so none of you had to. And now you're all turning on me because of her?" The room stayed cold, unmoved. The same people who once clapped for him at football games, who toasted to his promotions, were silent now, their faces hard. My mother rushed to his side, slipping an arm around him like she could shield him from the truth. "Come on, Ryan. We don't owe them an explanation. Let's go." She tugged at him, desperate to salvage whatever scraps of dignity she thought were left. But Ryan shook her off, his eyes locking on me with a venom that burned. "This is your fault," he spat. "You think you've won something here? You think anyone actually cares about you? They'll forget you tomorrow. Just like they always did." I took a step forward, steady now, my voice cutting clean through the thick silence. "No, Ryan. They'll forget you." Gasps rippled through the room, but I didn't stop. "You built your life on lies and cruelty. And tonight, everyone saw who you really are. The perfect son, the golden boy, the groom in the spotlight, gone. That's your legacy now. Not success. Not admiration. Just the truth. And the truth is, you're nothing without the lies Mom spun for you. Ryan's face crumpled, his hands balled into fists, but his shoulders slumped. My mother, pale and trembling, clutched at his arm again, whispering frantically, "We're leaving. Now." Together, they stumbled toward the exit, but not with the dignity they hoped for. Guests turned their backs as they passed. No applause. No polite smiles. Just silence, heavy and damning. At the door, my mother threw one last glance at me, her eyes full of fury and something else, fear. But I didn't look away. For the first time, she blinked first. And then they were gone. The hall felt lighter without them. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The doors slammed behind my mother and Ryan, and the air in the room shifted instantly. It was like a storm had passed through and left only calm in its wake. People who had spent years avoiding me, dismissing me, whispering about me, now looked at me with something I'd never seen in their eyes before: respect. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. My heart was pounding, my palms still damp, but I wasn't trembling anymore. I had faced them. I had said everything I'd swallowed for years. And they couldn't take it back. Aunt Linda came forward first, wrapping me in a hug so tight I almost couldn't breathe. "I'm so sorry, Hannah," she whispered. "We should have been there for you. I should have been there for you. But I promise you, we see it now. We see you now." Others followed, cousins, old family friends, people who had once believed the lies. Their apologies came in hushed tones, their shame plain in their eyes. It didn't erase the years of silence, but it was something. It was a start. And then, as the crowd settled, Ethan stepped closer. He didn't speak right away, he just looked at me, his green eyes steady, like they had been all night. The way he had stood between me and Ryan, the way he had spoken the truth when no one else dared, it was all there in his gaze. "You did it," he said softly, his voice meant just for me. "You finally took your place back." I felt my throat tighten, tears welling up. But this time, they weren't from pain. They were from relief. From freedom. "I couldn't have done it without you," I admitted, my voice breaking just a little. He shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You always had it in you, Hannah. You just needed the chance to show them." The band, unsure of what to do, struck up a soft tune, filling the silence with music. People began to talk again, some even laughed nervously, trying to smooth the edges of the chaos. But all I could focus on was Ethan, standing beside me like he'd been meant to all along. That night, as the wedding reception turned into something else entirely, I realized something important: my revenge hadn't been about screaming or destroying. It had been about reclaiming my voice. About forcing them to face the truth, stripping away the illusions they'd used to erase me. And I'd done it. By the time I left that hall, I wasn't the disappointment anymore. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't nothing. I was Hannah. And I had finally, truly won.